Hello everyone. I decided on the topic dwarfism for my bio presentation because I feel as if this disability does not get enough attention and is actually more common than you may think. And before I get started, I also want to add that most people with dwarfism prefer not to be labeled by this condition, and they take the term midget extremely offensive, is why I will not be using that term at all in my presentation. So what is dwarfism? Dwarfism is short stature that results from a genetic or medical condition. The Little People of the World Organization, or LPOTW, defines a dwarf as anyone who's under 4 feet and 10 inches. The average height of an adult with dwarfism is roughly 4 feet tall. So what causes dwarfism? Dwarfism is caused by more than 400 different conditions. Most cases of dwarfism occur from a random genetic mutation in either the father's sperm or the mother's egg, and rarely occurs from either parent's complete genetic makeup. And as you can see this picture on the right, a carrier father and a carrier mother reproduce. The chances of a child with dwarfism is 25%, because if this child would get the little d from both his mom and his dad, then she would be affected with dwarfism. They have a 50% chance of having a kid that's a carrier of dwarfism, and it could either be a male or a female. However, they also have the chance of having a normal child which will not have the dwarfism mutation. Growth hormone deficiency and hormonal disorders are also known to cause dwarfism. So there are 2 different types of dwarfism. Disproportionate dwarfism, which has achondroplasia in it, which is the most common form of dwarfism and the one that we tend to think of when we think of someone who has dwarfism. Proportionate dwarfism, which has the Seckel syndrome in it. So disproportionate dwarfism, an individual who has disproportionate dwarfism has an average sized trunk and very short limbs. Almost all individuals who have disproportionate dwarfism have normal mental capacities. And you can tell that someone has disproportionate dwarfism by their physical features, and that is like short fingers, prominent forehead, and a flattened bridge of the nose. And as you can see in this picture over here, almost all these individuals have a prominent forehead, but they have a normal sized trunk, but their noses are also flattened because the cartilage in their body did not convert to bone correctly. Achondroplasia. The word achondroplasia translates to without cartilage formation. However, in achondroplasia, the problem is not in forming cartilage, but in converting it to bone. Achondroplasia particularly affects the long bones of the arms and legs. And as you can see in this picture over here, a very famous actor, which I will get to in a little bit, has very short arms and legs, but he has a normal sized trunk, and his head is also proportionate to his trunk. This is the most common form of dwarfism, and I am sure this is what most people think of when they think of dwarfism. And a prime example of someone who has achondroplasia is Peter Dinklage. He's very prominent in Hollywood. I'd say his most famous role is in the Game of Thrones series. He's also in the movie Elf and the Avengers movies. Proportionate dwarfism. Proportionate dwarfism results from a medical conditions which are present at birth and overall limit growth and development. This means that the head, trunk, and limbs are all small but are all proportionate to each other. Growth hormone deficiency is a common cause of proportionate dwarfism. And as you can see in this picture on the right, this individual here has very short arms, very short torso, and a very small head. And when that comes into play, the organ systems may be smaller as well, which can lead to countless other medical problems. The main organ that gets affected is their digestive tract. It becomes very short and it's very hard for them to digest food properly and excrete it. Sickle cell syndrome, which is under the proportionate dwarfism section. Sickle cell syndrome is characterized by abnormally slow growth rate during fetal development. Slow growth rate continues after birth and can lead to short stature, which can be labeled as dwarfism. And abnormal facial features are extremely common with this syndrome as well. As you can see in this young man over here, he has proportionally large ears, the flattened nose, and his jaw is not developed correctly. So, a diagnosis of dwarfism. There are many forms. Many forms of dwarfism are evident in utero, at birth, or during infancy. Most often diagnosed through the use of x-rays and a physical exam. Sometimes, however, dwarfism doesn't become evident until later in life, and doctors may use tests such as appearance, genetic testing, and chest comparisons to diagnose dwarfism. And as you can see in this picture to the right, this was taken during an ultrasound, and the doctor labeled this infant with Achondroplasia, and he could tell because of the prominent forehead and the depressed nasal bridge, which is what I talked about in the previous slide, how the cartilage did not form correctly in the bone, so his nasal cavity is not properly developed. Dwarfism treatments. There is no one cure for dwarfism, but many treatment options are available to ensure that individuals with dwarfism can live a long and healthy life. Early diagnosis of dwarfism can lessen the problems of this condition. And dwarfism that is related to growth hormone deficiency can be treated with growth hormones to ensure that they reach a proper height of dwarfism and they are healthy. Doctors may also perform a surgery to remove tonsils in the adenoids to improve breathing problems, because as I said in the previous slide, their systems in their body, especially another respiratory system, their lungs are not at full capacity because they could not develop the proper size lungs. It's very hard for them to breathe, so the doctor will remove the tonsils in the adenoids to allow for proper air. And then Here are my resources. I used a bunch of government websites for this presentation. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.